And black people can't afford to indulge rich white people's need to endlessly flagellate themselves. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them.
Well, if he's right, then why didn't people vote for the former prosecutor who actually had policy plans to help the working class?
Stop saying that Whoopi Goldberg getting yanked from The View right after she attacked me on The View is karma. There's no such thing as karma, sorry.
Bill Maher is on a mission to call out what he sees as extreme woke views, and his latest target is none other than Whoopi Goldberg. She's been making headlines for some time now with controversial comments, and Maher has taken notice down her statements and pushing back in his usual blunt style. Since 2022, Maher hasn't just criticized Whoopi casually, he's been steadily calling her out, and his latest remarks really hit hard. After a recent comment from Goldberg sparked backlash, Maher fired back with a sharp response that left her supporters on the defensive. He's not just picking fights, he's making a broader point. Maher believes that some public figures get away with saying things that don't hold up, and he's not afraid to speak up when he thinks the line has been crossed. Love him or hate him, Maher's voice is hard to ignore. And this latest clash with Whoopi is just another example of how the culture debate is heating up fast.
Black people can't afford to indulge rich white people's need to endlessly flagellate themselves. They just want prices to go down and good jobs and the police when you call them.
Well, if he's right, then why didn't people vote for the former prosecutor who actually had policy plans to help the working class?
Whoopi Goldberg has jumped right into the spotlight again. This time, it's not looking pretty. After Bill Maher recently called out The View's Sunny Hostin for twisting his words, it seems the show isn't letting that slide quietly. Enter Whoopi, stepping in like she's on a mission to fire back. From the looks of it, Sunny wasn't too happy with Maher's takedown, so Whoopi took it upon herself to jump into the conversation. Ready to fight Maher's criticism head, she didn't hold back either, coming in loud and strong, almost like she was gearing up for a TV showdown nobody asked for. But while she might have hoped to settle the score, things haven't gone quite as planned. Now Whoopi finds herself facing real pushback, and the response hasn't exactly been in her favor. The tension between Maher and the View team is clearly heating up, and it doesn't look like it's cooling down anytime soon.
Tear down statues of Lincoln and get rid of the police. Just, no. It's not that I've gotten old, it's that your ideas are stupid.
Whoopi Goldberg jumped into the conversation like she always does, pulling from the usual woke playbook. When the argument started slipping out of her hands, instead of staying on topic, she shifted gears and built a totally unrelated point. Bill Maher was making a simple case. Many black Americans care about real, everyday issues, good jobs, a strong economy, and fair policing. That's it. Nothing extreme. But then Whoopi started talking about supporting a former prosecutor who helps the working class. It sounded off topic and didn't really connect to what Bill said. Her response felt all over the place, like she was trying anything to win the argument even if it didn't make sense. And Bill Maher wasn't having it. He called it out right away, refusing to let the distraction slide. This time, he stood firm and didn't let the nonsense go unchecked.
The criticism is valid because, Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time and, they act so self-righteous. The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to, whether or not, his son wanted to be pardoned. He could have said, hey, man, I'm not focused on that right now.
Let's tear down Lincoln statues and get rid of the police. That kind of thinking isn't bold or forward thinking. It's just not smart. And as Bill Maher pointed out, it's not that people like him are getting old, it's that some of these ideas are just plain ridiculous. He was specifically calling out Whoopi Goldberg's take, which, let's be honest, didn't make much sense. But that's nothing new for The View. The show has slowly turned into a chaotic mix of clashing opinions and half-baked arguments. It's tough to sit through, yet strangely hard to look away from, kind of like watching a slow-motion train wreck. It's known for stirring the pot. But lately, Whoopi and Sunny Hostin have taken things to a whole new level. Their comments often go from controversial to downright bizarre. Remember when Charlemagne Thagard came on as a guest? You could practically see him wondering if he'd stepped into some alternate reality.
I'm gonna stop you for a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed his mind.
You really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a sudden?
No, I'm gonna tell you what I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over.
Here's the short version. President Joe Biden, the same man who often says no one is above the law, just pardoned his own son, Hunter Biden, after Hunter was convicted on charges tied to corruption and related crimes. So much for leading by example. Naturally, this move sparked a wave of criticism. People are asking, how can you preach fairness and accountability, then turn around and give your son a free pass? It feels like justice hit the pause button when it came to the Bidens. Hunter's guilt wasn't exactly a mystery, it was as obvious as a kid caught with cookie crumbs all over their face. Yet somehow, consequences didn't follow. Family loyalty seemed to win out over the rule of law. That's where Charlemagne thought God stepped in. He pointed out the hypocrisy. If the so-called woke crowd wants to stand by the idea that no one is above the law, then they should live by it even when it's uncomfortable. Makes sense, right? Well, Whoopi Goldberg had a different take, and as usual, it didn't exactly line up with the facts. There it was, another classic facepalm moment from Whoopi Goldberg, the queen of awkward takes. This time, she actually claimed that President Biden wasn't lying when he said, "No one is above the law." Seriously, Whoopi, because there's a mountain of proof videos, audio recordings, and maybe even cave paintings showing exactly what he said. The evidence is crystal clear. But somehow she chose to ignore it.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law. Not even the President of the United States.
Watching Whoopi twist the facts felt like someone insisting the sky isn't blue, while standing under a perfectly clear, sunny sky. At this point, her mental gymnastics could almost qualify her for the Olympics, though she'd probably trip over her own logic. You could see the disbelief written all over Charlemagne's face as he listened to her. But Whoopi didn't stop there. She went on to say that maybe President Biden changed his mind because he was tired of people getting ahead of him. Charlamagne was left speechless, completely stunned by what she was saying.
So I'm just going to follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that go out. They're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground. They don't have to do that.
The problem with the so-called woke crowd is that they only call out bad behavior when it's someone outside their inner circle. But when one of their own messes up, suddenly the outrage disappears, replaced by excuses or plain old selective memory. Whoopi and her team have gotten pretty good at dodging responsibility, especially with Charlemagne around to help steer the conversation. But when Bill Maher caught wind of what was going on, he wasn't having it. He stepped up and fired off. One of the sharpest, most direct takedowns we've seen in a long time.
You love to speak truth to power, and we always should, but you have completely lost the ability to speak truth to bull.
Bill Maher couldn't have said it better. The so-called woke crowd loves to act like they're the ultimate judges of truth and morality, but their double standards are obvious to anyone paying attention. Take Hunter Biden, for example. Guilty as charged, plain and simple. But because his dad is the president, Hunter got off without even a slap on the wrist. If it had been anyone else, the woke mob would be demanding their head on a silver platter. Yet when it's one of their own, justice somehow takes a backseat to favoritism. It's hypocrisy at its finest. And Maher called it out for exactly what it is. Total sham and a farce. The big question now is, how much longer will Americans put up with this double standard? This isn't just about Hunter Biden, it's about a system that bends over backward for the powerful while coming down hard on everyone else. Maher's takedown wasn't just timely, it was a wake-up call for anyone still believing this system is fair. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Maher pointed out that the woke mob often has the support of mainstream media, which helps keep the story quiet.
Was it appropriate to bury the Hunter Biden?
You're talking about the press doing that?
He's saying that's what they did, and that is what they did. They buried the Hunter Biden story before the election because they were like, we can't risk having the election thrown to Trump. We'll tell them after the election.
And we know for a fact that that's what they did?
Of course, you don't follow this.
Saying you know for a fact that that's what they did. I don't know what they did.
I know, because you only watch MSNBC.
No, that's not true.
The media went all out to downplay the Hunter Biden scandal. They pulled every trick in the book to protect President Biden and hurt Trump's chances in the election. Major news outlets quickly labeled the story as Russian disinformation, even though the evidence kept piling up. Meanwhile, anyone speaking out was often shut down. Whoopi Goldberg jumped right on that train, dismissing the allegations on The View like they didn't matter. But Bill Maher wasn't having it. He called her out for defending instead of digging for the truth, breaking down her excuses one by one and exposing the clear hypocrisy for everyone to see.
Democrats run for office as if the voters don't live here, as if they don't go to the grocery store and Starbucks and the office, but they do. But a poll last year asked, if America is the greatest country in the world, more blacks and Hispanic Americans agreed with that than the white progressives. It asked if racism is built into our society. White progressives agreed with that at higher levels than black and Hispanic people. It asked if government should increase border security. Same result. Hispanic Americans are less okay with illegal immigration than whitey.
Bill Maher nailed it. The ladies of The View, especially Whoopi Goldberg, aren't just woke. They act like a pack of sharks. ready to attack anyone who doesn't share their views. Their style isn't about honest conversation or finding the truth. It's about shutting down anyone who disagrees and pushing their own agenda. Whoopi, in particular, has gotten really good at brushing off opposing opinions with a quick wave, like they don't even deserve her attention. But Maher didn't back down. He called them out, exposing their real tactic. Bullying disguised as activism. It's no surprise he's become their biggest challenge, constantly pointing out their double standards for an audience tired of one-sided stories. Maher's takes are like a breath of fresh air, cutting through all the same old tired arguments.
There's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense.
Mark's message is simple. The woke mob needs to stop throwing a fit over Trump's victory and start facing reality. He didn't steal the election, cheat, or magically make it happen. He won fair and square. Millions of Americans connected with his message, no matter how much it upset the progressive left. Instead of blaming Russia, racism, or whatever new excuses trending on Twitter, maybe it's time to accept that democracy means sometimes you lose. It's not broken, that's just how it's supposed to work. The sooner they stop playing the victim and start coming up with a real plan, the better their chances will be in 2028. Or even 23 to next.
Stop saying that Whoopi Goldberg getting yanked from The View right after she attacked me on The View is karma. There's no such thing as karma, sorry. Sorry, but life is random. The only word to describe it when a big game hunter gets trampled by an elephant and then eaten by lions is hilarious.
Bill Maher nailed it again. Not everyone who voted for Trump is out there holding MAGA rallies or worshiping golden statues. Most people just held their noses and voted because they were fed up with the Democrats' constant preaching and the woke mob losing touch with common sense. Voters didn't back Trump because of his tweets or his rough style. They did it because the alternative felt like sitting through a never-ending lecture from a self-righteous vegan at a BBQ. If the left wants to win next time, maybe it's time to stop pushing every extreme idea from the activist playbook and start focusing on what really matters to everyday Americans.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Uh-oh.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed his
You really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a
No,
sudden?
I'm going to tell you what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over.
It was pure comedy gold. Bill Maher didn't just drive the final nail into Whoopi Goldberg's coffin. He practically built the whole thing himself while laughing at the absurdity of it all. Whoopi, who calls herself the high priestess of the woke movement, made the big mistake of challenging Maher for daring to think for himself. Big misstep. Maher's response was classic Bill Sharp, honest, and downright funny. He pointed out the irony of a co-host from The View, a show that prides itself on having diverse opinions, criticizing him just because she disagreed with his view. Isn't it funny? A group that talks about tolerance all the time acts like it only means accepting their own opinions. As always, Maher wasn't about to let that slide. He exposed the hypocrisy inside the woke echo chamber where Whoopi and her team thrive, where real critical thinking takes a backseat to loyalty, and disagreement is treated like a crime. Watching Maher tear apart their weak arguments was like watching a masterpiece come together only. His tools were sarcasm and logic,